That's amazing. That's amazing. 711 AD, General Tariq. Again, growing up, bits and pieces. At my school, we had all white teachers, Asiatic students, but all white teachers. And there was one book in the stack, and it was about General Tariq. And at the time, I had no idea what I was reading, who I was reading about. But then from there, that sparked my interest in history, all that good stuff. And I'll probably say that might have been like in the 3rd grade. But Black History Month, none of these things are taught. So 711, who was General Tariq?
General Tariq was an African who comes in from West Africa, from the area now that we would know as the territory. That would be both Morocco and extending further south into what is Mauritania. And Tariq ends up being one of the lieutenants in this early Islamic invasion that will be initiated by the surviving Umayyad dynasty, because there was a conflict between Islamic powers in the east around Damascus, and then you have this this invasion where Tariq and then Abu al-Rahman I, who ultimately follow up and come into the territory that Tariq, and of course the Rock of Gibraltar is named after Tariq, who invades, and like you said, in 711. Most of his army was composed of Amazigh, or Africans. There will study the world around you. The more you study the world around you, the more you'll understand your creator, right? So this is very different than what the vast majority of Christian schools of thought at the time, which would primarily have been Roman Catholic, certainly in the Iberian Peninsula. And there wasn't a whole lot of scientific learning taking place. There are a few remote places. Medievalists have found some monasteries that had some ancient Greek and Roman texts that they used, but for the most part, this was not encouraged by the church, by the Roman Catholic Church. So just the value, the attitude that the Moors, this Muslim population had, emphasized the study of the world around them, and also took all the wisdom that had been accumulated over the course of antiquity, knowledge from Egypt, knowledge from Persia, knowledge from Greece, knowledge from Rome, knowledge from India, knowledge from China, because as the religion of Islam is spreading across the globe, Muslims are coming into contact with all of these other marketplaces of ideas. And because this was not suppressed as it had been at the time by the Roman Catholic Church, the Muslim world embraced it, encouraged its teachings. You had people like Ibn Hazm and others who were known, as great scholars of the medieval period. I already mentioned Ibn Rushdi or Averroes, who become renowned for teaching mathematics and medical science and history and aspects even of engineering, advances in agriculture, right? Introducing new agricultural products that didn't exist and introducing it on a wider scale, right? One of the things that's particularly significant is, of course, the introduction on a large scale of cotton,
Wow.
For the production, of course, of textiles and clothing. Most Europeans would have dressed in wool. Only the elites would have had access to like silks that were imported from the East and cotton attire as well. The Moors then set up schools at places like Córdoba and places like Toledo and places like Salamanca. And these schools, and of course in Granada, these schools become open to all. That's why when I mentioned earlier, people like Michael Scotus or Herman the German or Herman Alimanis and Roger Bacon, right? These are scholars that either went directly to Al-Andalus to study, which is what the Moors called, Moorish Spain, or what we know as Spain today in the Iberian Peninsula, or they began purchasing books because the Moorish Islamic world started to produce books in all of these areas that I just mentioned, all these different disciplines, scientific disciplines. And as they introduce this book market, people are then able to purchase the books and take them with them wherever they live. Wow. And the Moorish attitude, one of the things you may remember, perhaps from another lecture where I used the term the al-kitab, or the people of the book, where the Muslim attitude was Jews, Christians, and Muslims were all people of the book, meaning the Old Testament. And while the Muslims disagreed with the Jews in terms of aspects of theology and the rejection, of course, of the latest prophet being Muhammad, right? Peace be upon him and all the prophets. And the same attitude, say, towards the Christian community of saying, we love and revere Jesus, or in Arabic, Isa. In fact, he has a whole chapter, a whole surah dedicated to him and his beloved mother.
Attention all trucking companies. Is your fleet in need of a thorough cleaning? Are you tired of driving around in dirty and grimy trucks? Our team specializes in 16-wheeler truck cleaning services. We use the latest cleaning techniques and equipment to ensure that your trucks are spotless and road ready. From exterior washing to interior detailing, we've got you covered. The Velvet Touch ATL cleaning service, where cleanliness meets perfection. Call us today at 678-358-0506 to schedule your truck cleaning service. This ad is brought to you and provided by the ATL Touch Atlanta. Thank you. Let's continue the show.
There were differences over theological interpretation, but the Muslims at that time expressed a level of tolerance that is still noteworthy. I'm not talking about perfection, right? Because some people then will say, oh, it's a bunch of romanticism. No, it's not a bunch of romanticizing about tolerance. The Muslim world, compared to what was happening in most Roman Catholic circles at the time, were exceedingly tolerant, even respectful. Titus Burckhardt's book, which was written, almost 30 years ago, right? But still stands as one of these classic works that address this level of tolerance, because it's simply called the Moorish culture, right? This idea of being tolerant was a characteristic that even Christian rulers or Christians living in the community appreciated. And there's what's known, in fact, in Spanish, the convivencia, this idea of people being able to live together in a kind of respect and tolerance that allows the society to move forward collectively in many areas because of that cooperation. I'll say again, it doesn't mean at every point in time and in every place that's there. You can't, no historian could say that and know that that's a blanket statement that holds up. But compared to what was happening, like I said previously, this level of tolerance, and there's a book that I'm actually in the process of reading now that carries the title. It's called The Ornament of the World. It's the name of the book. But the ornament of the world was what a nun, Haratzvither of Gandersheim, writing in the 9th and 10th century, talking about her stories. I think it was, forgive me if I may, I think it was in the 10th century, writing about the stories she's hearing about how far advanced the Moors were, right? The Afro-Asiatic or the African, Muslim community or the Asiatic community, whatever terms one chooses to use, right, was with regard to Europe. And so these schools are set up. These book sellers are now, a major force. Cordova in the 11th century has something like 10,000 people who are registered as book dealers. Wow. Right? So that's telling you, right? And of course, when I say registered, meaning for tax purposes, municipalities always, set up a bureaucracy to figure out things around revenue and profession, et cetera. So that, or I should say, those things are what start to pull the majority of Europeans, certainly in Western Europe, out of what is known as the Dark Ages. So, and then I'll add one of the things so I don't forget. There's a documentary called When the Moors Ruled in Europe by a medievalist, a British lady, Bettany Hughes, historian, Cambridge University graduate. And she points out at the end of that documentary how Oxford University gets essentially its primary foundation in terms of really beginning to advance the sciences after someone named Daniel Morley has traveled to Moorish Spain, acquired this tremendous library, brings these books back to what is now Oxford. And that begins to propel European universities beyond simply being what are called cathedral schools. Wow. Right? Because cathedral schools, their primary focus was really just on teaching you how to be a good priest and how to serve the Roman Catholic Church. Going beyond that means they're now studying the sciences, even when the sciences contradict what the theology was at the time. You know, things like the world was round. Moors knew the world was round, right? Just as the ancient Greeks knew the world was round, just as the ancient Egyptians knew the world was round, right? So the point is, but information will be suppressed at certain points in time by certain authorities so that they could hold power. And in short, the Moors opened the gates of knowledge to a larger group of people, both in, of course, in the African and Middle Eastern world, if you will, as well as in Europe.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Why do you think our history, our legacy is always hidden somewhat, whether it's about Oxford, Cordova? Why is it always kept secret? And I already know, probably as being a scholar, when it comes to presenting documents, or probably when you had to get your doctorate and, talking about the Moors, that people were probably somewhat, scared about it, especially white professors, white doctors. So why, when it comes to our legacy and especially Moorish history, it's always kept hush hush?
That's a great question, brother. The reason, in my understanding after teaching now at the university and college level for some 3 decades.
Wow.
Is that there is something that we can refer to as global Eurocentric hegemony, or so-called global white supremacy, right? In saying that, it doesn't mean that every person who's identified as or identifies with the term white is consciously, actively involved in trying to suppress African people in particular, or Asiatic people, from knowing who we are, right? But what I am saying is, this machine of perpetuation has been running for several centuries. It even speaks to why, for example, 500 years ago or 600 years ago, if one used the term Moor, there was no doubt that that term was referencing primarily people of African descent. But what you find over the course of centuries is that some people say, well, wait a minute, no, that term also was seen to reference people who were known to be Arabs, even people from India. Yes, but my point is, when you go back at the beginning, when the term Moor is being utilized, right, in the context of European history, in the context of dictionary definitions, that's one of the greatest sources anyone can use to understand what the perspectives were of people at a given point in time. Go to dictionaries from the 17th century. Go to dictionaries from the 16th century. See how the Dutch, see how the English, see how the Spanish, see how the people of Italy, although there was no Italy as we know it today, because it was various states, but go to the earliest sources to see how they defined folks. And it was clear that people who were Moors, who they referred to as Moors, were most assuredly either African or clearly dark complexioned non-Europeans connected to Asia, right? That's why I mentioned India, for example.
Right.
But the reason for hiding the information, think about this. Almost 800 years, African and quote unquote Middle Eastern people occupied the Iberian Peninsula. They didn't just influence the culture in terms of the sciences and worldview. They literally influenced the culture in terms of bloodlines. The infusion of African and Middle Eastern blood into the European populaces or populations in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy, in Crete, and to some degree, I mean lesser, although there's a historian named Onyeka who recently wrote a book on the Tudors, the Black Tudors in England. And he talks about these African people that were coming into Britain, both from the period of the Romans right on up to the Tudor era. And he spends, Onyeka spends most of his time talking about the Tudors, which was one of the dynasties of the British crown, the British royal families.